When you're training for selection, choosing the right exercises is key because between running, rocking, weightlifting, and calisthenics, you have a lot of training to do. In this video, I will outline my favorite exercises to maximize your training, the criteria I use for selecting them, and then at the end, I'll walk through real strength data from Navy SEAL and Air Force Special Warfare candidates. Where 90% of trainees go wrong is taking a powerlifting or bodybuilding program and doing it as is. The bodybuilding routine will maximize your muscle gain, and the powerlifting program maximize your strength in the bench press, squat, and deadlift. And that's great if those are your goals, but there is no rule that says you must do powerlifting movements or tons of bodybuilding isolation work. What matters most is performing selection movements as efficiently and effectively as possible, and those are your running, rucking, heavy carries, and load carriage. With that in mind, here are the 3 criteria I use for exercise selection. First is specificity, which tells us how specific an exercise is for selection. Rucking or running, for instance, would be 100%, and when we talk about gym exercises, a trap bar farmer carry would score high, while band pull-aparts or tib raises would score low. Second is skill. How much skill is required to perform the exercise? A dumbbell curl would score low, since you can learn how to do it in just seconds, while the clean and jerk can easily take several weeks or even months to develop the technique before you can begin loading heavier. And third is how fatiguing the exercise is. A max effort set of squats will be brutal and require significant recovery costs, especially as your strength increases. But a set of chest-supported rows, even when taken to failure, doesn't come with much recovery cost. The ideal exercises for selection will be high in specificity, have a low skill requirement, and cause moderate to low fatigue. But preventative exercises that are low in specificity, like band pull-aparts and calf raises, still have a role. This is why I divide exercises into 2 groups. There are prime movers, which have high carryover to selection performance. As an example, someone who deadlifts 155 will struggle when rucking with 80 pounds, but by doubling his deadlift to 315, the improved stability and strength in his back and legs will result in improved performance. Thus, the deadlift would be a prime mover. On the other hand, there are your support exercises, which, while they don't have high carryover to selection, will strengthen weak muscle groups or reduce your risk of injury. Example of these are your calf raises, tib raises, rear delt, and other isolation exercises. One thing to remember is that none of the exercises we do in the gym will have 100% specificity, and none are necessarily right or wrong. So rather than thinking in terms of exercises, it can be helpful to think about the top movement patterns you need to develop and improve. First is the hip hinge, which develops the lower back. This is crucial to your durability both during training and for the longevity of your career. While you may feel upper back and shoulder fatigue during your rucks, I often find that discomfort is a result of compromised posture as the lower back fatigues and your back begins to fold. Second is the squat. While there's no squat test at selection, you will have 65 plus pounds on your back for multiple hours at a time for days in a row. And to withstand that, you need bulletproof legs, and the best way to develop them is through your squat variations, lunges, and even targeted isolation work can help. Third is your pulling movement patterns, both vertical like with pull-ups and horizontal like with barbell or dumbbell rows. Your pulling strength will be especially valuable when rucking, moving apparatuses, and carrying heavy objects. And while grip strength is critical for those heavy carries, your upper back strength is just as important. A strong upper back will stabilize your shoulder girdle, reducing the strain on your hands and forearms, allowing you to grip longer and harder. So make sure you're doing your pulling work. Now last but not least is your carries. You will be carrying heavy weights, both on your shoulders and in your hands, and for the latter you need a strong grip. Exercises like farmer carries and suitcase carries are must-do exercises for selection. You may have noticed that I didn't include pressing as a top movement pattern to improve. While I do include pressing movements like dips, weighted push-ups, and presses in selection prep, it's for general strength development. I mention this because this differs significantly from what you would see in a bodybuilding or powerlifting program. Before we get into the top exercises, you may be wondering how important the absolute weight is and exercise type is for selection, because surely you could do low weight and low fatigue exercises like machine presses, lat pull downs, and back extensions instead of deadlifts and achieve a great stimulus, right? Well, you would achieve a good stimulus to those target muscle groups, but in the context of selection training, the absolute weight you're moving and the load on your spine is critical. Here's why. At selection, everyone will have the same 65-pound rucksack, and if your back is only used to 45-pound back extensions and your legs 35-pound dumbbell lunges, even if you're doing them to failure, your body is going to be far less resilient and prepared than someone who did heavy weight training. The alternative is you worked up to 275-pound deadlifts and 225-pound squats for reps. Your body in that case will have acclimated to moving 4 times the weight of that 65-pound rucksack through full range of motion reps, and your body will be far more resilient and prepared to move that rucksack for hours at a time. This is why absolute strength with free weights matters, and calisthenics and machines alone aren't enough. With that said, here are my favorite exercises to program when training my athletes for selection. Number 1 and 2 are the trap bar deadlift and snatch grip Romanian deadlift. The trap bar deadlift allows you to load and strengthen the lower back and legs with very heavy weights, actually heavier than even a conventional or sumo deadlift. The benefit is a stimulus far greater than you can achieve with other exercises. But that extra stimulus does come with recovery cost, and for that reason I also like the Romanian deadlift and specifically its snatch grip variation. Romanian deadlifts place more load on the hamstrings and glutes, and the snatch grip variation is phenomenal for stronger athletes or those who are closer to selection because there's extra stimulus placed on the upper back to stabilize the weights, which results in lower absolute weight being used and a lower recovery cost. One pro tip for your deadlifts is to make sure that you use straps. You don't want your grip to limit your back and leg development. Third is the weighted pull-up. Once you can do 8 clean, unweighted pull-ups, start doing them weighted and load them as heavy as you can with good technique. I'm always surprised when I work with athletes who can do 10 or more pull-ups but have never tried to increase the weight. Start doing sets of 5 to 8 and add 5 pounds per week. You may surprise yourself with how heavy you can go. Data from Buds actually shows the average SEAL candidate could do upwards of 10 reps with 25 pounds. That's a good target for you to achieve. My 4th and 5th favorite exercises are the barbell back squat and barbell walking lunge. The barbell back squat is a staple in my athletes' training to build max lower body strength. There is simply no other movement you can perform to load heavier and drive more full body stimulus than the squat. And the walking lunge is a great accessory that builds strength while moving in space. Specifically, having weight loaded on the spine, you stretch the hip flexor while firing the other glute, hamstring, and quadriceps, similar to how you would when running or rucking. Now you may be wondering, Coach, aren't these barbell exercises too fatiguing based on your exercise criteria? And this is a valid point and where nuance in training comes in. In my strongest athletes, I may do just 2 sets of barbell back squats per week, or even drop them all together and do front squats or other variations. The reason why is because fatigue is amplified by how strong you are. Not all sets taken to failure are equal. Someone who can squat 405 pounds for a 10 rep max will induce way more fatigue than someone doing 225 for a 10 rep max. And beyond a certain level of strength, the recovery costs outweigh any benefits of lifting weights that heavy. So that's where you can begin substituting lower fatigue variations to the training or cutting down the number of sets to even 1 or 2 per week. This is a strategy I personally use with my stronger athletes. But again, for most, this isn't a concern unless you're coming from a strength background. If you have questions on this, feel free to leave them in the comments. My 6th favorite exercise is the farmer carry. It's no secret that selection, especially in the army, relies heavily on your grip strength. And while pull-ups, rows, and back exercises can develop it, you need to practice picking up heavy objects and moving them across distances. Some of my favorite variations here are trap bar and dumbbell farmer carries. And if you want to get even more specific for selection, suitcase carries are a great option as well. Before I close out this video, I want to leave you with some interesting strength data for male candidates. The average Navy SEAL candidate could deadlift 1.75 times their body weight and do 10 to 12 reps of weighted pull-ups with 25 pounds. And they could do 10 to 14 reps of the bench press with their own body weight. What sticks out to me here is that the deadlift numbers sound relatively low. With the average Navy SEAL candidate weighing about 180 pounds, that's a 315 pound 1 rep max deadlift, while they can do 180 pounds on the bench press for 10 reps. On the other hand, the average Air Force Special Warfare candidate can trap bar deadlift 345 pounds for 3 reps and do 15 bodyweight pull-ups. If you'd like to pull these exercises all together and build your own training routine, go watch my Ultimate Training Program video where I outline exactly how you can create a routine based on your strengths and weaknesses. And if you're looking for one-on-one advice on how to prepare for selection, you can apply for coaching at the link in the description.